It is July 2013 on a rooftop in St. Petersburg. The sun hangs low over the city, stretching shadows across the concrete. 16 stories below, cars crawl through narrow streets, their noise faint and distant. At the edge stands Pavel Kashin. His friends hold the camera steady, framing him against the skyline. They are waiting for yet another dangerous stunt, something Pavel has done many times before. Pavel Kashin was 20 years old, a student in St. Petersburg with a gift that set him apart. From the moment he discovered free running, he pushed himself harder than anyone around him. Friends remembered long afternoons spent watching him repeat the same flips and handstands again and again, chasing perfect form. As the years passed, the city of St. Petersburg became his training ground. Rooftops, bridges, abandoned buildings, each new location was another challenge. Videos of his stunts began circulating online, shared first among friends, then through Russia's free-running community. Viewers were struck by the scale of the risks he was willing to take, and how easily he seemed to control them. That reputation is what carried him to the rooftop on that July afternoon. The city had given him hundreds of stunts, but this rooftop would be the last. The rooftop was 16 stories above the ground, the ledge no wider than a few bricks. From that height, even the smallest slip would mean disaster. Pavel stepped into the edge with practiced ease. His friends positioned the camera, keeping him centered against the skyline. For them, this was routine. They had seen him land backflips on rooftops before, each one as controlled as if he were on solid ground. Still, Pavel stood calm, arms loose at his sides, eyes fixed on the horizon. He had done this many times, and he was about to do it again. He crouched low, pushed off the ledge, and spun backward. The first backflip was perfect. He landed steady, feet planted on the narrow edge. His friends cheered softly behind the camera. But Pavel wasn't finished. He wanted another backflip, even closer to the edge. He set his feet again and jumped. This time, the takeoff shifted. Just slightly, but enough. His body tilted offline, arms flaying for balance. His heels missed the ledge. The camera stayed fixed as he slipped from view. 16 stories below, the impact was fatal. His friends ran down, but there was nothing left to save. News of the fall spread quickly through St. Petersburg and across the free-running community. Pavel Kashin's final stunt, captured on camera, became the moment that defined his legacy. A reminder that on rooftops, one mistake is all it takes. It is June 26th of 2017. In Hallstatt, a quiet town on the Minnesota-North Dakota border. The summer air is heavy. The streets calm, nothing out of the ordinary. But outside a small house, cameras are already set up. Two young YouTubers prepare to perform a stunt they believe will change their lives. Monalisa Perez was 19 and balancing the weight of early motherhood with dreams of something bigger. Life in Hallstatt moved slowly. It was a small farming town of barely 600 people, where the days felt quiet and predictable. For Monalisa, YouTube offered an escape, a way to share pieces of her life with the world beyond Minnesota's flat fields. Her boyfriend, 22-year-old Pedro Ruiz, was the driving force behind the channel. To those who knew him, Pedro was full of energy and determination. He talked constantly about building an audience, about going viral, about the day people would finally recognize their names. What others dismissed as impossible, he carried as conviction. Together, the couple had been filming pranks, stunts, and glimpses of family life. Their channel was small, but growing. In Pedro's eyes, every video was a step closer to fame. He wasn't looking for ordinary views. What he wanted was a breakthrough. That hunger shaped their daily routine. Nights were spent scrolling through ideas, studying other creators, planning the next video that might set them apart. Pedro's mind always turned towards spectacle, something no one else would dare to try. Monalisa, quieter and more cautious, often followed his lead. She believed in him, and in the vision of a different future that YouTube seemed to promise. It was that belief mixed with Pedro's determination that set the stage for what would come next. On that June evening, as the sun lowered over Hallstatt, they stood outside with cameras ready. This was meant to be their biggest video yet. The plan sounded simple enough. Pedro would hold a thick, hardcover encyclopedia against his chest, while Monalisa fired a shot into it. The book, he believed, would absorb the impact and prove that even the most dangerous act could be turned into entertainment. Before they began, Pedro explained it on camera. He held up the encyclopedia, showing its weight, the hundreds of pages stacked tight, and he told the viewers that paper was stronger than most people thought. To prove it, he showed another book torn and dented from a huge gunshot, but still in one piece. "This will work," he said, convinced. The video was his proof of confidence. But the weapon in Monalisa's hand was no ordinary handgun. It was a .5 caliber Desert Eagle, one of the most powerful pistols sold to the public. At close range, almost nothing could withstand its force. Friends and family had warned them not to try it. Some even begged them to stop. But Pedro brushed the concerns aside. He was convinced the stunt would work. And more than that, he believed it would make their channel famous. So that evening, they set up multiple cameras to capture every angle. In front of the lens, Pedro pressed the encyclopedia tight against his chest. Beside him, Monalisa gripped the gun, her hands trembling as she prepared to aim. The recording light blinked red. The stunt was underway. Pedro held the book tight, giving Monalisa a final nod. She lifted the gun, her hands trembling, the barrel aimed at his chest. For a second, the backyard fell silent. Then, the shot rang out. The encyclopedia burst apart, pages exploding into the air. Pedro collapsed instantly. The bullet struck Pedro in the chest, tearing through his heart. Monalisa dialed 911 in panic, her voice shaking as she begged for help. When police and medics arrived, they found Pedro already gone. The thick encyclopedia had offered no protection against the power of the handgun. The tragedy made headlines within hours. What was meant to be the couple's breakthrough video has ended in death. Monalisa, 19 years old and pregnant with their second child, was arrested at the scene. Prosecutors charged her with manslaughter. In court, she admitted to pulling the trigger, but insisted she had never believed it would kill him. Pedro, she said, was the one who pushed for the stunt, convinced the book could stop the bullet. The judge sentenced her to 180 days in jail, served 10 days per year over 3 years, followed by 10 years of supervised probation. She would give birth to her child while carrying the weight of that night, a single shot that destroyed the life they had been trying to build. The footage of the stunt was never released, but the build-up of the plans, the warnings, and even Pedro's own words remain online. The story of Monalisa and Pedro endures as one of the clearest reminders of how chasing fame on camera can turn deadly in an instant. Yuri Lipski has been drawn to the water for as long as he could remember. Born in Russia and later moving to Israel, he discovered diving as a teenager and quickly turned it from a hobby into a passion. The sea gave him something the surface never could, a sense of weightlessness, freedom, and challenge. By his early 20s, he had already earned work as a diving instructor, guiding others through the basics while chasing harder dives for himself. He was not reckless, but he was ambitious. His students remember a calm, patient teacher, while his friends saw someone who constantly wanted to go deeper and push further. He carried a small helmet-mounted camera on many of his descents, recording the quiet world below the surface. The footage was part diary and part training tool, a way to relive each dive and study what he had done. By 2000, Yuri was 22 and spending time in Dahab, Egypt, a place famous among divers for both its beauty and its danger. The town sits along the Red Sea, where coral reefs and vertical walls attract visitors from around the world. And just off the shore lies the Blue Hole, a sinkhole plunging more than 100 meters straight down. For experienced divers, it was a place of fascination. For many others, it was a graveyard. Locals called it the diver's cemetery, because so many who entered its depths never returned. The site's reputation did not deter Yuri. If anything, it drew him closer. On the morning of April 28th, he stood at the edge of the Blue Hole with a single tank strapped to his back and his helmet camera secured in place. He was calm, collected, and ready to capture another dive on film. What he could not have known was that this recording would become his last. He stepped off the rocks and slid beneath the surface. For a few seconds, the world above was still visible, sunlight rippling through the waves. Coral framed the rim of the Blue Hole, its colors glowing against the darkness below. As he kicked downward, the sounds of the shore disappeared. The water swallowed him quickly. His camera recorded the descent. For the first minute, everything looked fine. His movements were calm, his breathing steady, the surface still faintly visible above. But with every meter, the pressure mounted. At 30 meters, divers begin to feel nitrogen narcosis, a condition often described as being drunk underwater. It clouds judgment, slows reaction, and convinces the mind that everything is fine when danger is close. By 60 meters, the risks multiply. A diver must constantly adjust buoyancy to control descent. adding air to the buoyancy compensator to resist the growing weight of the water. Failure to do so creates a runway drop, faster and faster with each passing second. Yuri pressed deeper, alone, carrying only a single tank and no backup. At 5 minutes into the recording, he was already past 90 meters. He held his dive computer up to the lens, a silent signal of how far he had gone. Then the panic began. He clawed at his inflator, pressing frantically to slow his fall. Nothing happened. The narcosis dulled his thinking, turned focus into confusion. The camera shook violently as he flailed against the pull of the depths. At 115 meters, the pressure was crushing and the tank nearly empty. In a final, desperate moment, he tore the regulator from his mouth. A torrent of bubbles filled the lens before fading into silence. The camera kept recording as his body drifted into the stillness of the blue hole, 115 meters below the surface. When Yuri failed to return, word spread quickly through the dive community in Dahab. The following day, renowned recovery diver Tariq Omar was called to the site. He had retrieved bodies from the blue hole before, and this time his task was the same. Descending to 115 meters, he found Yuri's body resting at the bottom, the helmet camera still secured to his head. Both were brought back to the surface. The footage soon circulated among divers, and later across the internet. To many, it became one of the most haunting records ever captured underwater. Within the diving community, his death was repeated as a warning. The blue hole was not a place for shortcuts or solo attempts. It demanded preparation, training, and respect, things a single tank and a camera could never provide. Yuri Lipski has set out to record another dive. Instead, his camera documented his last. It is March 10th of 1996 in Mesquite, Nevada. The desert air is dry, the sky a pale blue, and thousands of spectators line the outdoor arena. At the center of it all is Butch Laswell, one of America's most seasoned motorcycle stunt riders. Television crews are in place, cameras already rolling. On this day, Butch is preparing to attempt the longest jump of his career. Sherman Dwayne Butch Laswell had spent most of his life chasing the thrill of two wheels leaving the ground. Born in 1958, he grew up inspired by daredevils like Evel Knievel, men who turned danger into spectacle. By his 20s, he was already performing stunts across the United States, soaring over cars, buses, and trucks on his motorcycle. Through the 1980s and into the 1990s, his name became familiar on the stunt circuit. Crowds admired his jumps and the precision in which they were executed. He carried himself as a professional, practicing endlessly and treating each event as both entertainment and engineering. By 1996, Butch was 37 years old and regarded as one of the most experienced stunt riders in the country. He had survived crashes before, and he knew the risks better than anyone. Yet, he still believed in pushing boundaries. Every new jump was a chance to go further, higher, and prove again that the impossible could be done. That drive for spectacle and recognition is what brought him to Mesquite, Nevada, in front of thousands of fans and a row of movie cameras. The jump was set outside the Oasis Hotel and Casino in Mesquite. A massive steel ramp stretched skyward, its peak aligned with the pedestrian skywalk bridge that spanned the road below. On the far side, another ramp waited for the landing. Between them was open air and unforgiving concrete. To the spectators, the stunt seemed simple. Ride up the ramp, soar across the bridge, and land safely on the other side. But in reality, every second of the jump demanded perfection. The motorcycle had to leave the ramp at the right angle and reach close to 70 miles per hour to clear the gap. If the speed fell short, the bike would strike the bridge itself. If it was too fast, the landing ramp would be missed completely, ending in disaster. Once in the air, nothing could be corrected. The rider and bike became a single projectile, bound to the laws of physics. Even the smallest crosswind could push them inches offline, enough to miss the ramp entirely. In Mesquite that afternoon, gusts of wind were beginning to roll through the desert. Butch Laswell noticed them. Spectators recalled him circling his bike, stalling with wheelies as if waiting for the wind to settle. He had made thousands of successful jumps in his career, but he knew the risk was never gone. Still, the cameras were rolling, and thousands of people had come to see the stunt. After minutes of hesitation, Butch tightened his grip on the handlebars, turned toward the ramp, and prepared for the run-up. He revved the engine, the roar of the motorcycle echoing off the casino walls. Then, with a burst of speed, he shot toward the towering ramp. The bike climbed cleanly, lifting high above the bridge. For a moment, it looked perfect. The audience gasped as he reached nearly 65 feet into the air, flying higher than the skywalk itself. But midway across, the wind struck. A cross gust pushed him off course, shifting the bike left of the landing ramp. Spectators watched helplessly as his trajectory veered. He tried to steer back in line, but once airborne, there was nothing more he could do. The motorcycle missed the landing zone and slammed onto the concrete below. The cameras captured everything. Instantly, the stunt had turned into tragedy. Paramedics rushed to the crash site within seconds. Spectators were stunned into silence as emergency crews worked frantically on the concrete floor. Butch Laswell was still alive when they reached him, his body broken from the impact. He was airlifted by a helicopter to a nearby hospital, where the doctors fought to save him. Despite their efforts, he died shortly after arrival. He was 37 years old. The crash was captured from multiple angles by television and film crews who had come to document the record attempt. That same footage, meant to showcase greatness, instead recorded his final moments. In the years that followed, it appeared in documentaries and later circulated in shock videos. Butch Laswell had aimed to make history that afternoon. Instead, his final jump became the last one he would ever perform.